The government is buying 2,200 empty condos in Metro Vancouver. Not building them, not planning them, buying them. Brand new completed units that developers cannot sell, sitting empty right now across the city. And the federal and provincial government are preparing to step in and purchase roughly half of them using, that's right, the taxpayers' money. This has never happened in Vancouver before. And depending on how it gets done, it could be one of the most consequential moves in this real estate market in a generation, or one of the most expensive mistakes taxpayers have ever been asked to absorb. I'm Rouzy with the TK Group, a realtor based here in Greater Vancouver. About a year ago on Bloomberg News, they were talking about what I call shadow inventory. Thousands of brand new completed condo units that developers were sitting on and could not move. At the time, the estimate was somewhere around 2,200 to 3,000 empty units. Today, that number it has grown to over 4,400, a 46% increase in a single year, which means the situation got dramatically worse while most people weren't even paying attention. And now the government's answer is to buy half of them. Today, I want to walk you through what this actually means. Not just the headlines, but the angles almost nobody is covering. If you want to talk through what any of this means for your situation as a buyer, seller, or someone holding a unit in one of these buildings, the link to book a call with me is in the description below. Let's get into it. Here is what we're covering. First, how we got to 4,400 empty units and why developers cannot move them. Second, the Strata problem buried inside this buyout that nobody's asking about yet. And third, the second part of this story that is getting almost no media attention and which I think is actually the more important signal for where this market is heading. So let's start with how we got here. Over 4,400 brand new completed condo units are currently sitting unsold and empty across Metro Vancouver. These are not units under construction, not units being planned, completed buildings with finished units that developers cannot sell. A year ago on Bloomberg, the number was roughly half of that. It was nearly doubled in 12 months. The reason is straightforward. Developers built aggressively during the boom years, extrapolating pandemic-era price growth, planning for million-plus people arriving in Canada annually, and accessing cheap financing to bring the projects to market. Then immigration got cut. Interest rates went up. Construction costs exploded, and buyers' demand, well, it collapsed. The project's completed anyways, because you simply cannot stop a building mid-construction. And now those units are sitting, which brings us to why the government is stepping in. The argument for the buyout is simple on the surface. We have been running headlines after headlines about housing affordability crisis. At the same time, we have over 4,400 empty completed units. The idea of buying those units and converting them into affordable housing is logical. I get it, on the surface especially. It is faster than building from scratch, it puts empty products to use, and it addresses a real need. But here is where it gets complicated. We do not know what price the government is paying, and that detail changes everything. If the government buys these units at full construction costs, which some developers are arguing they're entitled to receive, then taxpayers are essentially absorbing the full losses of a development industry that made enormous profits over the 2 decades and is now asking to be made whole on their bad bets. This is a recent example worth looking at here. A developer in Port Coquitlam recently purchased a partially completed foreclosed-on project at a discounted acquisition price. Because their cost basis was lower, they can build in today's expensive environment and still offer units at an accessible price point. That is what a bulk government purchase should look like. Significant discount, hard negotiations, especially when you are the single largest buyer in the market. Because let's be honest about what this is. The government is about to become the largest purchaser of condo units in the history of this province. That kind of buying power should come with leverage to demand a real discount. If it doesn't, if the government pays full price or close to it, then this is a bailout. And I want to be clear about something. Developers are a business like any other business. Over the last 2 decades, they made extraordinary money in this market and the cycle turned. This is how the market works. The question is not whether developers should or should not absorb losses. The question is whether taxpayers should be the one absorbing those losses for them. Now, here's the angle I have not seen in a single publication cover yet. And I think it is the most important one for anyone who currently owns a unit in one of these buildings. Strata voting rights. When the government buys 50% of the units in a single condo building, it does not just become a landlord, it becomes a dominant voice in every strata decision that the building will ever make. Every maintenance decision, every bylaw change, every capital expenditure, replacing the elevators, repainting the exterior, updating the windows, each strata unit gets one vote. If the government owns half the building, they control the outcome of virtually every vote. The private buyers who closed on units in good faith, who paid full price, who went through the stress test, who signed their mortgage documents, now have the government as their dominant strata neighbors, dictating building management decisions they have no meaningful ability to override. I'm not saying that this will definitely go badly, but I am saying nobody's asking the question yet, and it needs to be asked before 2,200 units get transferred. There's also the landlord angle. Private landlords in Vancouver are already competing in one of the most difficult rental environments this city has seen in over decades. Vacancy rates at a 37-year high. Rents are down nearly 10% year over year. Landlords offering free months just to get units filled. And now 2,200 government subsidized units are entering the same rental market, directly competing with private landlords at a below market rate. If you're holding a rental unit in Metro Vancouver right now, this development makes your situation materially harder. Now, here's the part of the story that is getting almost no coverage, and in my opinion, it is actually the more important signal alongside the unit buyout. The government is also announcing a $3 billion funds over the next 10 years to reduce developer fees, municipal charges, infrastructure levies, building permit costs, the taxes developers pay to bring a project to market. The projected saving is around $40,000 per development. That number sounds modest compared to the scale of what it costs to build in Vancouver. But the signal behind it is the real story. The government is not just trying to solve today's empty unit problem, it is also trying to restart construction for tomorrow's supply problem. Because here's the math that should concern everybody. Developers need to pre-sale at least 65% of the building before they can access construction financing. Right now, with 4,400 unsold completed units sitting on the market, developers are not even thinking about starting new projects. The pipeline is, well, it's frozen. And CMHC and other agencies are projecting that if construction does not restart, Canada will face serious housing supply shortfalls when the population growth returns. The 2025 population decline was an anomaly, driven by policy, not a permanent trend. So the government is doing two things at once: buying the inventory that is choking the present and reducing costs to unfreeze the pipeline for the future. Whether it works depends entirely on execution, whether the buyout comes with real discount, negotiations, or developer-friendly full price transfers. Whether the fee reductions are meaningful enough to change the math on a new project, and whether the strata complications in mixed government and private buildings get addressed before they become a real problem for any owners. What I know right now is the Vancouver condo market is in a genuinely historic moment. 4,400 empty units, a government stepping in as the largest buyer this province has ever seen, a construction pipeline that has effectively stalled, and a set policy moves that will reshape this market for years, regardless of how they play out. If you're trying to figure out what any of this means for a unit you own, a purchase you're considering, or a pre-sale contract you're sitting on, this is exactly the kind of moment where you want someone running your specific numbers with you. Book a time with me. Link is in the description. Stay sharp and see you in the next video.